Not a typical program where you guys would normally be doing this, but things have changed in Bloomington.
Yeah, nothing's typical about what this program's done the past 2 years. So it's awesome to be here. To me, this is one of those stories that, I kind of liken it to like Gonzaga. These guys are probably too young, some of these guys, but when I was young, that was a Cinderella story team in the tournament. Now it's built up to be one of the top programs where you expect them to win, right? And I think that's what Curt Cignetti's doing. That's what this university is trying to build. And I think with building off of what they did last year, it was going to be hard to, take those next steps. It's always the hardest thing to do is that following it up. But they've done it so far, and it's pretty remarkable to think what they've been able to build over the past 2 years.
What do you see from them in terms of the elite quarterback, the consistent elite quarterback play year after year after year, and obviously here?
Well, I'd say it starts off by just, I think, Curt Cignetti being able to identify what he's looking at in a quarterback, and I think those traits in particular, you go back to Curtis Rourke, you look at Fernando this year, they're both really accurate passers. If they have a clean pocket, they'll eat you alive. I think the other thing I see from them is, allowing them to not only kind of handle things in the line of scrimmage, but not putting too much on their plate as well, allowing them to be out there and kind of play free. But even going back to his JMU days, all those players end up being, conference players of the year. So he's been able to identify, the traits that he's looking for out of his quarterback to be the right fit for his situation, circumstance, and I liken it to some NFL quarterbacks you see, right? Guys like Sam Darnold's playing really well at Seattle. Didn't work out in the first few stops. Like Baker Mayfield finds his way to Tampa. Now he's playing as one of the best in the league right now. So situation, circumstance, and fit is so big for quarterbacks, and I think it's a two-way street in college football right now with the transfer portal. Coaches being able to identify who those guys are, but also the players seeing that, hey, that's a program I know if I go to, he can maximize my traits and abilities, and that's what Mendoza is doing this year.
When you watch Fernando on film, what really pops to you?
He's decisive with the football. The best coach teams, the easiest way to be able to see how they execute at such a high level, is when they're working through the progressions, they're making the reads, they're decisive. There's no hesitation. You don't see him kind of double clutching the ball. You don't see him with his feet look a little bit, kind of hesitant or a little happy in the pocket, as they would say. That's all because of their preparation, obviously the way they're taught, how they're trained. But it's them feeling confident in the plan and then playing decisively in that manner. So that's what I see from him. Is he knows where he's going with the football. He's delivering an accurate throw that's going to be a run after catch, and that's a huge piece, I think, of why they've been so successful.
What do you see from you're saying is exactly what Signetti said that he needed to work on in the spring. Are you surprised that a quarterback can become that prolific at something like that?
Nothing surprised me anymore with these young guys, man. They're so good coming in as far as mechanically. It's hard, and I don't know how Matt feels about it, but I go back to being a multi-sport athlete where when you got to college, they were trying to change out some of your baseball throwing mechanics and stuff, not overstriding or not dropping your arm when you throw, and all those things you're still working on. Nowadays, these dudes come in so polished. It's incredible. And I think whether it's some of the true freshmen we've seen, like Malik Washington, the kid in Maryland's playing great, there's so many out there, but then you look at other guys where they're jumping from team to team, and there's not much of a physical, jump where they're trying to change mechanics. It's just mental, and these young men are so prepared too in that respect. I think because of the technology they have access to, the 7-on-7, and the private coaching they get as they come up, that they're able to make that transition, make it seem much easier than at least it used to be.
What do you feel it is about Curt Cignetti that makes him an elite coach?
I think there's a few things I'd point to. The continuity in staff is huge. It's one thing to coach your players. Players are always listening. They're always looking for someone to be able to pour into them and help them to get better and succeed. But coaches are, if we're being real, all of them are in it to eventually be a head coach one day. And usually when you have a lot of success, your coordinators end up getting poached. They end up, other universities say, I want a piece of what Curt Cignetti's doing there. And maybe that day is going to come now, now that, they've kind of gotten to this point. But that group has remained intact for, at least with Sig, for at least both coordinators over 10 years on each side, and as coordinators at least the past 5. So that's a big piece of it. I think, again, talent evaluation, understanding the right character of the type of guy they want within the program. That's a big piece of it, and I think he's a really good ball coach. You look at some of the mentors, his dad, obviously, you look at the impact that he's had on him, being around a guy like Nick Saban. He's, Coach Sig, I won't tell you, but he's a guy who's played the game too, so he has that perspective as a player. I think all that kind of meshes into why he's been so successful.
Going back to your playing days, if you were facing this defense as a quarterback, what would scare you about them, or what would kind of concern you when you kind of look at the film that stands out?
What would concern me is there's probably some matchups up front where you're concerned with your protection. Play a lot of zone, so, for me, depending on where you're at in your career, you give me zone, I'll pick you apart all day. But, for other guys, Nico just got there. He's got a different coordinator now. There's some things that I think they could do to confuse him, to force him to throw footballs, into different, trap coverages or into pressure that might lead to turnovers. So those are some of the things you're always concerned about anytime you see a team that likes to play a lot of zone. It's just their eyes are always on you as a quarterback, so there's more opportunity for them to get tip throws, balls, overthrows, things like that to get interceptions.
What's the biggest difference between this year's Indiana team and last year's Indiana team from your eyes?
So far it doesn't really feel like there is much of a difference at this moment. I think the biggest thing was, Fernando's playing just like that much better than I think Curtis was a year ago. Defensively, too, they really haven't skipped a beat, but it's probably just collectively proving that they can win that big game. The way they won at Oregon, not only with the physicality, but just kind of the dominance to go in there like that. That was like one of those things that kind of checks off the box where now when we talk about, all right, can this team win a national championship? You go, yeah, they just beat one of the best teams in the country. So that win, I think, said a lot about kind of where the program's at, even though the record, again, is trending similar to where it was last year before we went to the playoff.
From a program standpoint, how important is alignment, president, athletic director, head coach, and an overall investment in a program?
Yeah, let's just look at it and call it what it is. These programs are becoming professional teams. So it's no different than the NFL when you have an owner, for example, that isn't in alignment with the general manager and the head coach aren't on the same page. You feel that dysfunction, and it's eventually going to work its way down to the players, and it becomes a disaster, especially when adversity hits, because adversity is going to hit at some point. So in today's age of college football, it's crucial. That's again, you see the universities that can't seem to quite figure it out, or maybe they're like a blue blood, they haven't really got back to where they once were. Oftentimes it's because there's not alignment, and they can't figure out how to get everyone on the same page in an era of college football that's kind of ever-changing.
Heisman-wise, just what's it kind of, the top of it, just like how do you view it right now?
Yeah.
What's kind of your top list?
You got a bunch of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Kind of a quarterback-driven award, unfortunately, for the players out there. But look, Fernando's right up there. I think Julian Sand's up there. There's a number of guys you can throw in the conversation, and it really comes down to not always, sometimes even the best player in the country. Like I think you put Jeremiah Love on any team, he's probably the best player in the country. But again, the award's going to go to someone who kind of has that great season and then has some of those Heisman moments. And I think for Fernando, you go back to Oregon, how he played in that game, that's a huge moment for him. If this thing trends the way I think it's going to, the next biggest one's probably going to be the Big Ten championship, and that's another opportunity there right before the Heisman, where you're going to get a lot of people who are watching that game intently to see how Sam plays, how Fernando plays, and who ends up getting the edge on that.
We've seen a lot of teams, they're biased for whether it's SEC people or whatever the case. And for Fernando to try to win the Heisman, not coming from a traditional school, that's probably going to have an effect on him, because it's kind of become the best player from the best team, the award.
Well, that's why, again, it's so important that they continue to keep playing the way they have and dominate, and keep having the statistical argument, having that kind of dominant argument with the best teams. But then when it comes down to that next big game, making sure that you're playing your best football, in that matchup. And that's the only way you can do it, is you've got to just kind of convince everyone and leave no doubt. And it's hard to do, to your point. Look, I played. I know how it was. People would think they give you the benefit out of Notre Dame. Meanwhile, you got the entire SEC vote against you. Like, no one wants to see a dude from Notre Dame win it. So, trust me. There's only love from the fan base. The rest are all the voters want to vote for someone else. So, I understand the position he's in. He's got his work cut out for him. But if he plays the way he's capable of, and they end up winning out, win the Big Ten, he's going to be there in New York. Won't be shocked if he's hosting up the trophy.
All right, guys, we've got to wrap Brady up.
Thank you, Brady.
Thank you. But if you guys